an interesting point of contention in the creative narrative as far as secularists, non-believers, whatever you want to call them, versus the religious, the theistic, is how were things made? And an interesting point of criticism specifically about that is how supposedly light is created on day one, but the bodies of light in the cosmos, the star, the sun, the moon, are not created until day 4. And that this is something that secularists, that I've even experienced on my own, have criticized. How could this possibly be? And I want to respond to those criticisms. So, first of all, what they'll often say is the idea of that if the star, the sun, the moons, or whatever didn't exist yet, where did the light come from? And it presupposes this essential relationship between cosmic bodies, satellites, etc., the planets, the sun, the stars, the moons, whatever that are out there, and light itself, that these two things have some kind of conjunctive essential relationship, and clearly that's not the case. That, in fact, one of the biggest obstacles to viewing the night sky for the average person is the presence of artificially created light. Campfires, and flashlights, and headlights, and just all the things that mankind has created that also produces light. The very screen you're watching this on produces a very large amount of light that is likely detrimental to our actual eye health itself. That light is not essentially tied to those organic, or whatever you want it, cosmic bodies. That they do have a relationship, but it's not an essential, automatic one. And that's the first thing to note. Light comes from a lot of things, not just from the cosmos. So it's also notable that this is very consistent with the Big Bang Theory. That, in fact, the Big Bang Theory was originally developed to his own ridicule at first by a Catholic priest. That it's something that, as far as the idea of a Big Bang would have created an explosion, that explosion would have created a lot of light initially, and then order to follow afterwards. So this is not an issue as far as both secularists and theists agree with that order, that the ordered bodies that produce light that we are able to see in the night sky now, if you're fortunate enough, come much later. In fact, as far as their age is concerned, that our local little neighborhood we live in, the solar system, is much younger than the rest of the cosmos. That's not a controversial statement. So even if we sort of, like, light comes from faraway places and it takes light years, maybe even billions or trillions of light years to reach us, that light must have preordained or pre-existed our ability to observe it. So this is not controversial whatsoever as far as that specific order, but we also need to deal with the matter of the poetic nature of this specific narrative. In Genesis 1 and 2, you have a poetic description of what God creates, and that has a poetic significance to it beyond simply the order in which it occurs. But it should be noted again that the order in which is described is consistent with what the secularists believe did happen timeline-wise. Those are not controversial things. But what happens is that there's originally formless void, basically meaning that there's chaos, and that chaos is empty, there's nothing in it. And that at first, we have order, order, order. 3 consecutive days of God bringing order where there was non-order previously. That this order is brought first to the cosmos, then to the sky and sea, and then to the land. And then on day 4, we begin to see populations emerge within those ordered structures that had been created on the previous 3 days. So on day 4, you have the cosmic bodies, planets and stars, the sun and moon, and that these specific things are also given sovereign authority, essentially, that these are going to be the markers for grading the times and the seasons, which is what we have always done. Every calendar is based on the movements of stars in either the sun or the moon or both. Every single one of them. These things dictate to us how we order time. That's just reality. And so you not only have a population, but you also have what could be referred to as a ruler. And the way that, as far as a ruler is a 12-inch piece of wood or metal, that it tells you how far apart things are. So then on day 5, you have the sky and the sea begin to burst forth with life. They're populated, and that on day 6, you also have the earth bursting forth with life as well. That it goes from, so it went from formless to formed, and then from void to filled, empty to filled. Done. Day 7, God rests, which rests as in like the sheet music form of a rest, a point in which one simply stops. So that's the creation. And that, again, I have to keep reiterating this, of that nothing about that order is controversial. That every single step in it is very consistent with the secularist theory of evolution, you might say. That each one of those things is, as far as a timeline-wise, we can argue about how long that timeline is, we can argue about various things, but what we do know for sure is that these steps are agreed upon both on their side and on our side. None of that is controversial. So, as far as, first, light can come from many sources, not just stars. And so, and that our local cosmos, which is what the Genesis description is describing, the solar system and the star systems that we have the ability to see from our planet, that those things are very young, and that light itself must pre-exist them as part of the Big Bang, and that later those things that we are able to see would become visible, and that light would eventually reach us, etc. Nothing about this is controversial. So that this whole thing, in a lot of ways, is a dance of ignorance on the side of the secularists, poking fun at, mocking, ridiculing something that they themselves don't understand. And don't understand how that by criticizing it, they're actually also cutting off their own legs from underneath them. That's the point. So that this is not something that is incredibly controversial in any way. It's simply that both of the secularists and the theist agree about the timeline as far as order of events and sequence and everything. The only thing that is points of contention is how much time did it take, and did it have a personal originator. Those are the only two things that are controversial and up for debate.